The obsidian dome of the Grand Conclave pulsed with a dim, internal luminescence, casting long, distorted shadows across the gathered delegates. Here, in the heart of the Zylosian hegemony, the fate of worlds was debated, and the air itself seemed to hum with a palpable tension, a thrumming anxiety that resonated deep within the crystalline structures of their multifaceted bodies. High Archon Thraxus, his primary sensory cluster unfocused, his secondary clusters locked onto the agitated flickers of the delegates surrounding him, felt the weight of their unease as if it were a physical burden. For cycles, the hegemony had known only dominion, expansion, the predictable rhythm of conquest and assimilation. But the emergence of humanity had shattered that ancient cadence, introducing a discordant note that threatened to unravel the very fabric of their ordered existence. "They are an anomaly," declared Prelate Vorn, his voice a low, guttural rasp that echoed unnervingly within the vast chamber. His manipulators, slender and tipped with obsidian claws, gestured with agitated precision towards the holographic display dominating the chamber's center. It depicted a swirling nebula, a relatively unremarkable sector of the galactic arm, until recently considered a strategic null zone. Now it was the nascent cradle of a species that defied every known metric of galactic sociology and warfare. Their propulsion technologies are primitive, their energy signatures erratic, yet they have achieved FTL travel, bypassing established routes, ignoring all recognized territorial markers. Archon Thraxus shifted his weight, the subtle click of his chitinous exoskeleton a counterpoint to the prelate's rising agitation. Primitive, perhaps, but effective. They arrived unannounced, an uninvited presence in systems we considered secured for millennia. Our initial probes returned perplexing data. Small vessels, almost insignificant in scale, capable of evading long-range detection and penetrating established defensive perimeters with alarming ease. He paused, allowing the implications to settle. They do not operate within the established frameworks of engagement. There is no diplomatic overture, no declaration of intent, no attempt at communication recognized by hegemony protocols. A ripple of disquiet passed through the assembled council. Glimmering facets caught the dim light, revealing expressions of bewilderment, suspicion, and an undercurrent of something akin to fear. This was not the usual calculus of conquest. The Zylosians, with their millennia of experience in subjugating nascent civilizations, had never encountered a species that seemed to operate with such utter disregard for the established order. A species that, in their initial, fragmented encounters, had demonstrated a terrifying blend of brute force and uncanny subtlety. "Subtlety?" scoffed Ambassador Lyra, her voice a silken whisper that nonetheless carried an edge of contempt. Her bioluminescent tendrils pulsed with a controlled, disdainful light. "They are barbarians, Archon. Their initial incursions were met with overwhelming hegemony force. We destroyed their outposts, their exploratory vessels, and yet they persist, more emerge, they adapt. They learn, they absorb our tactics, our weaknesses. It is unnatural." "Unnatural?" echoed High Scholar Zerath, his elongated cranial ridges pulsing with deep thought. "Or perhaps simply different. We have always assumed that advancement in technology and societal complexity follows a predictable trajectory. Strength dictates dominance. Logic dictates order. Diplomacy, when necessary, is a tool of the strong. Humanity, however, appears to operate on a different set of axioms. Their capacity for violence, when provoked, is undeniable as their recent unfortunate engagement with the mining colony of Xylos Prime demonstrated. But it is not their violence that unnerves me. It is the aftermath. It is the silence, the complete lack of any recognizable emotional response. They did not gloat. They did not demand. They simply secured the territory and began to excavate, as if it were their right. The mention of Xylos Prime sent a fresh wave of unease through the chamber. It was a stark reminder of the hegemony's first, significant miscalculation. A small, strategically insignificant outpost, deemed ripe for assimilation, had been swiftly and brutally reclaimed by a human fleet that had appeared out of the void with breathtaking speed. The Zylosian garrison, accustomed to protracted sieges and predictable surrender protocols, had been annihilated in a matter of hours. The speed, the precision, the utter lack of hesitation had been profoundly disturbing. There had been no calls for parley, no demands for reparations, only swift, decisive action. "Their ethics, if they can be called that, are as alien as their physiology," Thraxus mused, his gaze drifting back to the swirling nebula on the display. "They claim Xylos P. Rime as their own, a system that has been under hegemony protection for over 300 cycles. They claim it based on historical precedent. A forgotten colony established by an ancestral human faction that perished centuries ago. They have unearthed ancient records, authenticated by their own crude methods, and declared their claim. A claim backed by overwhelming force, Prelate Vorn retorted, his manipulators clenching. They wiped out the Zalosian garrison without a single undue casualty among their own forces. Their ships, while small, possess armaments that can punch far above their weight. And their tactics, they employ flanking maneuvers that our most advanced tactical simulations cannot replicate. It is as if they anticipate our every move. Ambassador Lyra's tendrils flared. Anticipation born of espionage, I believe. They have infiltrated our networks. They have observed our fleet movements. They have learned our doctrines. Or perhaps, High Scholar Zerath interjected, his voice a low murmur, they simply understand conflict on a fundamental level that we have long since transcended. We have become accustomed to the grand strategies, the carefully orchestrated maneuvers, the diplomatic nuances that precede conflict. Humanity, it seems, has not. They react. They defend. And when they decide to act, they do so with a clarity of purpose that is chilling. Thraxus steepled his manipulators, his primary sensory cluster focusing on the silent, expectant faces around him. The hegemony's strength lies in its order, its predictability. Humanity is chaos. They are a storm that has appeared without warning, a force that threatens to dismantle the established paradigms of galactic civilization. We underestimated them once. We cannot afford to do so again. The silence that followed his pronouncement was profound, broken only by the soft, internal hum of the dome and the distant, almost imperceptible whisper of the life support systems. The delegates, from the most decorated generals to the most esteemed scholars, felt the chill of an uncertain future. The Zalosian hegemony, an empire that had spanned countless star systems, a civilization that had weathered cosmic storms and diplomatic crises for eons, found itself staring into an abyss of the unknown, a terrifying void opened by the sudden, inexplicable appearance of a species that dared to challenge their ancient, unassailable authority. And within that void, a new narrative was beginning to unfold, a narrative that would redefine the very meaning of strength, of resilience, and of the indomitable spirit of a species that had finally decided to fight back. The void between stars was a canvas painted with the ethereal hues of nebulae and the distant pinpricks of ancient light. It was a realm of unimaginable scale, where the grand fleets of the Zalosian hegemony, vast crystalline behemoths that dwarfed even the largest gas giants, moved with the slow, deliberate grace of celestial bodies. Their journey was a testament to their dominance, a silent assertion of their unchallengeable power across the galactic arm. But within the shimmering, opalescent hulls of the flagship Stellaris Invictus, the atmosphere was far from serene. The primary observation chamber, a cavernous space designed to project an aura of unwavering authority, was a crucible of nervous energy. The light, usually a cool, clinical white, flickered with an almost imperceptible tremor, reflecting the internal anxieties of those gathered. High Archon Thraxus stood before the main viewport, his multifaceted gaze fixed on the swirling tapestry of cosmic dust and gas unfolding before him. Beside him, the holographic emitters projected the latest sensor readings, a complex web of data that painted a picture of the unfolding situation with chilling clarity. A human diplomatic envoy, small, unassuming vessels, were en route. They were not approaching from the established jump points, nor had they followed any of the hegemony's meticulously defined transit lanes. Instead, they had emerged from a seemingly empty region of space, a calculated maneuver that spoke volumes of their advanced and, frankly, baffling navigational capabilities. Their trajectory is precise, stated Commander Vex, his metallic voice devoid of emotion, yet the tension in the chamber was palpable. They will enter our hailing range within standard cycles. Our preliminary analyses suggest their escort consists of minimal defensive capabilities. Light cruisers, perhaps a handful of frigates, nothing that would pose a significant threat to even a single hegemony patrol vessel. And yet, Archon Thraxus interjected, his voice a low rumble that commanded attention, they have consistently outmaneuvered and outfought our forces. Their tactics are unorthodox, unpredictable. They appear to possess a spatial awareness that defies our understanding of gravitational mechanics and warp field dynamics. How do they? Why achieve such rapid acceleration and deceleration without catastrophic inertial effects? How do they achieve such instantaneous shifts in vector? Our brightest minds cannot fully decipher it. Prelate Vorn, his crystalline form shimmering with an almost aggressive luminescence, shifted his weight. Arrogance, Archon. It is not superior technology, but a reckless disregard for established physics. They throw caution to the wind, relying on sheer audacity and primitive brute force weaponry. Their energy projectors, while powerful, are inefficient. Their shielding technology is rudimentary. They have no answer for sustained bombardment, no defense against sophisticated counter-frequency jamming. And yet, Archon Thraxus's gaze remained fixed on the viewport. They have conquered worlds. They have repelled hegemony fleets. They have reclaimed systems we considered ours. The incident at Xylos Prime was not an isolated event. The human response was swift, brutal, and utterly decisive. They did not negotiate. They did not parley. They simply acted. High Scholar Zerath's multi-jointed appendages moved with a deliberate, almost unnerving grace as he adjusted a series of environmental controls. Their actions are a reflection of their core philosophy, Archon, a philosophy rooted in self-determination in the inviolability of their claimed territories. They do not seek to conquer, but to defend, and their defense is absolute. They view any intrusion into their claimed space as an act of aggression, to be met with equal and overwhelming force. Ambassador Lyra, her bioluminescent tendrils pulsing with a controlled rhythm, added, "Their claim to Xylos Prime is based on historical records, Archon, ancient, fragmented data salvaged from a lost colony. They have presented this as incontrovertible proof of their ancestral rights. It is a claim that defies our established principles of territorial sovereignty, principles that are based on continuous occupation and recognized governance." And yet, Thraxus countered, his voice grave, they have the means to enforce that claim. Their small, swift vessels can evade our long-range patrols. They have demonstrated an ability to bypass our established defenses to strike at will. They have not engaged in grand diplomatic maneuvers in carefully crafted alliances. They have simply arrived. And when challenged, they have responded with a ferocity that has caught us entirely unprepared. A heavy silence descended upon the chamber. The delegates, accustomed to the predictable ebb and flow of galactic power, found themselves adrift in an ocean of uncertainty. The Zalosian hegemony, a civilization built on millennia of calculated expansion and unwavering authority, was facing a new, unpredictable variable: humanity. A species that defied their understanding, that operated outside their established norms, and that possessed a terrifying capacity for decisive action. "They call it the line they shouldn't have crossed," Thraxus murmured, recalling fragmented transmissions intercepted from human communications channels. A phrase of peculiar significance. It suggests a threshold, a point of no return. The colonization of Xylos Prime, it seems, was that line. Commander Vex projected a new set of data streams. The human envoy is now within visual range, Archon. Their vessels are, as predicted, small, utilitarian, no obvious weapon emplacements visible from this distance. Thraxus inclined his head, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. "Initiate standard diplomatic protocols, Commander, but maintain full combat readiness. We will extend to them the courtesy of engagement, but we will not be lulled into a false sense of security. The age of predictable conquest is over. The age of human understanding has begun." The diplomatic chamber of the Zalosian hegemony was a marvel of bioorganic architecture. Walls shimmered with latent energy, shifting hues in response to the emotional states of those within, creating an ever-changing kaleidoscope of light and shadow. At its center, a vast, crystalline table pulsed with a gentle luminescence, its surface a fluid medium capable of displaying complex holographic projections. High Archon Thraxus presided, his form radiating an aura of controlled gravitas. Around him sat the most influential members of the hegemony's ruling council, their multifaceted eyes fixed on the chamber's entrance. The air was thick with anticipation, a tangible tension that vibrated through the very structure of the room. For cycles, the hegemony had debated the enigma that was humanity. Their initial encounters had been marked by confusion, then by a growing, unsettling respect, and finally by a stark, undeniable fear. The human envoy, after weeks of tense standoff and carefully worded communiques, had finally agreed to a face-to-face meeting. The chamber doors, vast, shimmering membranes of light, parted silently, revealing the delegation. They were unremarkable. Small, their forms encased in utilitarian environmental suits that offered no hint of their biological makeup. Their movements were economical, their expressions obscured by their visors, projecting an unnerving calm that belied the sheer audacity of their presence. At their head walked a single individual, their stance radiating in quiet, unyielding resolve. "Greetings," the lead human's voice resonated through the chamber, clear and devoid of any discernible emotion, yet carrying an undeniable weight of authority. It was not a voice accustomed to supplication or intimidation. "I am Representative Eva Rostova. We are here to establish a framework for coexistence." Archon Thraxis's primary sensory cluster focused intently on Rostova. There was no visible intimidation in her posture, no outward display of aggression. Yet behind the impassive visor he sensed a depth, a complexity that he had not encountered in any other species. "Representative Rostova," Thraxis began, his voice a carefully modulated resonance. "Your arrival here, uninvited in a system claimed by the hegemony for millennia, has caused considerable consternation." "Consternation," Rostova echoed, her voice unblinking. "We understand. The hegemony operates on principles of established dominion, of conquest and assimilation. We, however, operate on principles of self-determination and the sanctity of ancestral rights. The system designated Xylos Prime by your records is, in fact, designated as Sol's legacy by our own. It was colonized by our ancestors over 500 cycles ago. A fact you, in your expansionist fervor, seem to have overlooked." Prelate Vorn, ever the pragmatist, interjected, his voice a harsh rasp. "Overlooked, or deemed irrelevant? The colony perished. It was absorbed into the hegemony's territory. It has been under our protection and development for centuries." Rostova's head tilted infinitesimally. "Perished, perhaps. Forgotten, certainly, but not surrendered. Our claim is based not on current occupation, but on the continuous lineage of our people. We have unearthed the records, authenticated the artifacts. We have returned to reclaim what was lost." Ambassador Lyra's bioluminescent tendrils flickered with disdain. "And your method of reclamation was annihilation. The garrison at Xylos Prime was eliminated with extreme prejudice. No quarter was offered, no terms of surrender accepted. The hegemony's forces occupied territory that was rightfully ours," Rostova stated, her voice remaining calm, steady. "Their continued presence was an act of aggression. Our response was calibrated to neutralize the threat and secure our ancestral lands. We do not engage in wanton destruction, Prelate. We engage in the necessary defense of our sovereignty." The word necessary hung in the air, laden with implications. The hegemony, accustomed to the elaborate dances of diplomacy and the carefully delineated rules of engagement, found itself confronted by a species that viewed conflict not as a strategic game, but as a stark, uncompromised necessity. High Scholar Zerath, ever the observer, spoke, his voice a low, thoughtful hum. "Your technology, Representative Rostova, it is divergent. Your vessels achieve speeds and maneuverability that defy our understanding of warp dynamics. Your energy signatures are unique. How is this possible?" Rostova's visor seemed to momentarily shift its opacity, as if acknowledging a complex question. "Our understanding of the universe is rooted in exploration and adaptation, High Scholar. We do not adhere to rigid theoretical frameworks that limit our potential. We experiment, we discover, we innovate. Our propulsion systems, for instance, do not merely bend space-time. They interface with it on a quantum level, allowing for instantaneous displacement rather than mere transit." This was a revelation, not just a technological leap, but a fundamental redefinition of FTL travel. The hegemony's warp drives, powerful and efficient, were nonetheless bound by the limitations of conventional physics. Quantum entanglement on such a scale was a concept that had remained purely theoretical, a distant dream. "Quantum entanglement for propulsion?" Prelate Vorn scoffed, though a flicker of unease crossed his crystalline features. "That is audacious." "Audacity is often the precursor to discovery, Prelate," Rostova replied evenly. "We also possess a deeper understanding of energy manipulation. Our weapons systems, while appearing primitive to your sensors, are designed to disrupt at a subatomic level, bypassing conventional shielding by exploiting harmonic resonance vulnerabilities." This explained the utter devastation wrought upon the Zalosian garrison. Their advanced shields, designed to withstand kinetic impacts and energy bombardment, had been rendered useless, their very molecular structure destabilized. Archon Thraxis felt a profound shift within him. The arrogance of the hegemony, the certainty of their mill, and neo-old dominance began to erode. He had always viewed humanity as a disruptive force, a chaotic element in the galactic order. Now he saw something else, a species that had achieved a profound understanding of the universe, a species that wielded knowledge and technology with a precision and ethical clarity that far surpassed his own civilization's crude applications of power. "You speak of ethics, representative," Thraxus said, his voice softer now, tinged with a newfound respect. "Yet the destruction at Xylo's prime was considerable." "The cost of reclaiming one's birthright is never small, Archon," Rostova stated. "But the alternative, allowing our history to be erased, our existence to be denied, was an even greater cost. We do not seek conflict. We seek acknowledgement. We seek the right to exist, to chart our own course, unhindered by the ambitions of others." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates, her unseen eyes seeming to pierce through their crystalline forms. "We have demonstrated our resolve. We have proven our capability. Now we offer a choice. Coexistence, based on mutual respect and the recognition of established boundaries. Or continued conflict, a conflict that will prove far more devastating than anything the hegemony has ever encountered." The chamber fell silent. The shifting colors of the walls seemed to hold their breath, reflecting the stunned disbelief of the delegates. Humanity, the primitive upstarts, the barbarian invaders, had revealed themselves not as a threat to be vanquished, but as a force to be reckoned with, a species possessed of a profound understanding of the universe and an unwavering commitment to their own destiny. The age of human apprehension was over. The age of human revelation had begun. The atmospheric processors of the Grand Conclave hummed with a low, almost melancholic thrum, a stark contrast to the usual cacophony of political debate. The air, thick with the scent of exotic flora and the faint metallic tang of advanced technology, seemed to hold its breath. High Archon Thraxus stood at the focal point of the chamber, a vast, holographic projection of the Sol system shimmering before him. The images were not of conquest or subjugation, but of peaceful expansion, of technological marvels, of a species charting its own destiny amongst the stars. The delegates, once a collection of fearful, arrogant beings, now sat in hushed contemplation. The encounter with Representative Eva Rostova and her envoy had been transformative. The revelations of human quantum entanglement propulsion, their subatomic weaponry, and their unwavering ethical framework had shattered the hegemony's deeply ingrained assumptions. They had been so focused on the outward manifestations of power, fleet size, territorial control, destructive capability, that they had fundamentally misunderstood the true nature of humanity. "Their capacity for innovation," Archon Thraxus mused, his voice resonating with a newfound gravitas, "is not born of aggression, but of a profound imperative to understand and to safeguard. Their history, as they presented it, is a tapestry of resilience, of overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds, of a relentless pursuit of knowledge and self-determination." Prelate Vorn, his crystalline form now subdued, his usual bluster replaced by a quiet introspection, spoke. "We have always believed that strength lies in dominance, in the imposition of order. Humanity has shown us that true strength lies in adaptation, in innovation, and in a clear, unwavering ethical compass. Their decision to reclaim Sol's legacy was not an act of unprovoked aggression, but a restoration of a long-denied birthright." Ambassador Lyra's tendrils, usually so animated with disdain or calculation, now hung limply, their bioluminescence a soft, thoughtful glow. "Their diplomacy, while stark, is honest. They do not engage in deception or manipulation. They state their intentions, their limits, and their resolve with absolute clarity. It is a form of communication that, while initially jarring, is ultimately refreshing." High Scholar Zerath, his cranial ridges pulsing with the slow rhythm of deep thought, added, "Their understanding of quantum mechanics, of space-time interaction, it opens up entirely new avenues of scientific inquiry for us. They have not merely surpassed us in technology. They have redefined the very principles upon which our understanding of the universe is built. It is a humbling yet exhilarating prospect." The holographic projection shifted, displaying the serene, intricate orbital structures that humanity had constructed around their star. These were not weapons of war, but marvels of sustainable energy generation, of terraforming, of deep space research. The sheer scale of their peaceful achievements, achieved in what the hegemony considered a mere blink of an eye, was staggering. They have demonstrated that a species can achieve galactic presence without resorting to the cycles of conquest and subjugation that have defined so much of our own history, Thraxus observed. They have achieved a remarkable balance between technological advancement and ethical governance. They are not a threat to the galactic order. They are, in fact, its potential architects. The delegates murmured their assent, a quiet symphony of agreement that filled the chamber. The fear that had gripped them had begun to dissipate, replaced by a nascent sense of awe and a dawning understanding. Humanity was not an anomaly to be feared, but a paradigm shift to be embraced. "We propose an accord," Thraxus declared, his voice firm, resonating with the conviction of a newly enlightened leader. "A treaty of mutual respect, of scientific exchange, of shared exploration. We will recognize Sol's legacy as human territory, and they, in turn, will respect the established borders of the hegemony. We will share our knowledge, our resources, and our understanding of the galaxy." As the delegates began to formulate the terms of this unprecedented alliance, a new alert flashed across the main holographic display. It was not a diplomatic message, nor a sensor reading from a known sector. It was an ancient, faint signal emanating from the far reaches of the galactic fringe, a signal that had been dormant for eons, now reawakening. "What is this?" Prelate Vorn queried, his voice tinged with alarm. High Scholar Zerath's appendages moved with frantic speed as he analyzed the incoming data. It is a beacon, an artificial signal incredibly ancient. Its origin point is outside our known galactic sectors. It is emitting a complex data stream encoded in a language that is unlike anything we have ever encountered. The projection shifted again, no longer showing the Sol system, but a distant, nebulous expanse, a region of space previously considered uncharted and uninhabitable. At its heart, a single, impossibly vast structure began to resolve from the cosmic haze. It was colossal, far exceeding the scale of any known celestial body or artificial construct. A Dyson sphere, perhaps, but one of unimaginable magnitude, encircling not a star, but a singularity. "By the void," Ambassador Lyra whispered, her tendrils recoiling in shock. "What is that?" "It appears to be a megastructure," Zerath breathed, his voice filled with a mixture of terror and wonder. "Older than the hegemony, older than the earliest known galactic civilizations, and the signal it is not a distress call. It is an invitation." Archon Thraxus's multifaceted eyes widened, his gaze fixed on the colossal structure that now dominated the holographic display. Humanity's rage, their defiant assertion of self-determination, had pushed the boundaries of the known galaxy. But this was something far greater, a cosmic mystery that dwarfed even the emergence of humanity. "The humans spoke of the line they shouldn't have crossed," Thraxus murmured, a profound realization dawning within him. Perhaps that line was not merely a territorial boundary. Perhaps it was a threshold that once crossed revealed a truth far grander, far more ancient, and far more terrifying than we could have ever imagined. The ancient signal pulsed, a silent call from across the unfathomable gulf of time and space. The newfound understanding between the Zalosian hegemony and humanity, forged in the crucible of conflict and revelation, now paled in comparison to the dawning realization of a shared, cosmic destiny. The universe, it seemed, was far larger, far more mysterious, and far more populated than either species had ever dared to dream. The true threat, the ultimate frontier, lay not in their political squabbles or territorial disputes, but in the silent, waiting darkness of the cosmos, and the unfathomable secrets held within the heart of an ancient, abandoned megastructure. The alliance between humanity and the hegemony was not an ending, but a beginning, a fragile unity forged in the face of a universe far grander and more perilous than they had ever conceived. The rage that had exploded on Xylos Prime had, in its own way, illuminated a path not to destruction, but to a shared future, a future inextricably linked to the vast, unknown expanse that lay beyond the stars.